one of the things I loved about the film last night was watching a film with a focus, with this 4-year focus. And I wondered, you know, why it was useful to you, or if it was useful to you, to have like a sort of a part of his life, you know, not to tell the whole story, not to try and sort of, you know, broad strokes, but to have a part of your life and to inhabit Dylan when he was kind of creating himself.
Yeah. Well, this was a fascinating period of Bob Dylan's life because in some ways it's the least chronicled. This is the period of his life that has the least footage accompanying it, particularly 1961 and 1963. So I didn't choose what dates the movie set in. You know, based on my age, I can only play within a certain range anyway. But this is a sort of a fascinating period because it's, as you said, when he actualized becoming Bob Dylan, and when he obviously made this sort of historic transition from folk music to rock and roll.
So I watched the film with my daughter Rosie, and she said to me afterwards, she said, watching your performance was like going to the circus. When you watch someone do something extraordinary, and then you forget that they're doing it.
Wow, what a compliment.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
I thought it was a really nice way of putting it. So how did you get to that point, man? You know, how did you get to the point where your blood feels like Bob's blood, where your intonation feels more natural to you than Timothy's intonation?
Well, a lot of work, a lot of time studying all his music and studying the way he was.
And what was that journey like, man? Because I know that it helped that, obviously, lockdown happens. And this kind
exactly.
of stop-start process. Mm-hmm. So did that mean you could give yourself to it?
Yeah, exactly. I had more time, you know. We were supposed to shoot it the summer of 2020, then there was the pandemic. Then we were supposed to shoot it the summer of 2023, so there was the actor strike. So there was a lot of time available to me to sink into all of this stuff, the way he was as a human, his guitar playing, all the books available about Bob, the books available about his contemporaries, about Joan Baez, about Paul Clayton, about that period of music. And just, you know, it became a curiosity at some point. It felt less like work and more just something that I was just deeply passionate and obsessed about.
And I could see that you would have to be obsessed.
Yeah.
You know, particularly when you come to the live performance, because I didn't understand until I was watching the movie that you were doing all of this live.
Yeah, this is all live.
So what was that, man? Was that to get to that moment when you're ready to step out, even in front of a bunch of background artists, and do that to your own standards?
Yeah.
Which I believe are extremely high.
Yeah.
I mean, when do you feel ready? How do you know if you're ready?
I don't know if I ever was. There was either a tremendous lack of self-respect and no self-esteem, or the total opposite, an egomania or something. But I just felt, I just love this music, and I love the opportunity to get to do it live, particularly with the old microphones and the old theaters and the old reverb. And I love these original recordings, you know, like the Brandeis University recordings of Bob Dylan, you know, are some of the coolest songs he ever put out. So I just fancied getting the opportunity to do it myself.
Great. Well, it worked, man.
Yeah.
It worked.
Thank you.
Do you know, it worked so well. In the performance in the Gaslight Club, I think it was, and there was a lady that was along the aisle from me when we were watching it, and at the end of the performance, she started clapping as if she was in the audience.
Fantastic.
You know, and it was like, shit, man, no, we're watching a movie.
No way, she really did that?
Yeah, she really
amazing.
did that. It
amazing.
was insane, actually. We kind of shared a little look, and she was like, oh.
That's amazing.
In the moment.
Yeah, that's great.
And testament to the way that James shot it as well, I think. You know?
Yeah, totally. You feel really involved. You feel really present. I think.
I wanted to know how useful, you know, a director is. It feels like it must have been such a personal journey. What does James offer you on that journey? What's his value?
He offered me a masterful guiding hand because he had done this before with Joaquin Phoenix, Walk the Line. His trust, but also really his I'd say most of all just his prescience to see through the idea that this had to be factual and step-by-step recreations of how it was, you know, that we had major artistic license here, that the whole exercise was about artistic license.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, but before we finish, I want to ask about this sort of ensemble cast, because, you know, as you were saying last night, we learned a lot about Bob, who can be quite opaque, it feels.
Right.
We learn a lot about him through the people around him. And I want to know, you know, what it was like to have Ed there and to have Elle there, and people that kept you in the world?
Yeah, well, they were all massively invested the way I was massively invested. So they were just ultra present and defensive of their characters in a sense, like very protective over all their characters, and in the perfect way. Everyone was in their own movie in a sense. So they were really instrumental in helping me go about what I was doing, because they just brought life to it. You know, this wasn't some cushy project where people were showing up for the paycheck. Everybody was going extremely hard.
It looked, in the best way, it looked like hard work.
Yeah.
Because it's there on the screen.
Exactly.
So congratulations.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
I hear you might be a little bit of a fan of Bob Dylan.
That is true.
How excited were you when this project came across your desk?
I was excited when I saw the press release that Timothée was going to play Bob Dylan and that James Mangold was going to direct a film about Bob Dylan. As a fan growing up, I was like, I want to see this movie. I'll be the first person to buy a ticket. But then I got another amazing surprise when Jim called me and said that there might be a part for me in the movie, which was, I don't know, in so many ways I feel like I've been manifesting getting this part like one day, because I have been a really big fan of him since 13. So, you know, I'm not the biggest Dylanologist in the world. I don't know every date or tour, but I just love the music. So,
were you aware at all of Sue's before this part came out?
Now, no, I was not. I knew the woman on the Freewheelin' album cover, and I think I knew that was his girlfriend, and I had heard the name Suze Rotolo, but I did not know really anything else about her. So to get to read her memoir was a freewheeling time. There's so much in there about their relationship, and especially about, you know, growing up in the village in the 60s and just the youth culture of the time. She really captures it so beautifully in that book. So I got to learn a lot. Yeah.
And what did you make of her relationship with Bob? I mean, her character's been renamed in the film.
Yes. Well, I think that was the challenge of the part, was that I am playing the one person that isn't well known, and she's the one, you know, she's not musical. She doesn't sing or play instruments with him. So it was making sure that I was able to kind of overcome just being the girlfriend part, because obviously, I mean, there's so much more to her and so much more to what she did and how she inspired Bob in that time. You know, she was very politically involved. She was an activist in the 60s, and Bob wasn't so much into politics until he met her and she introduced him to that world. She was an artist in her own right. She was a painter. And I mean, you can Google, there's so many songs that he has written about Suze and that relationship. I mean, Boots of Spanish Leather, and the list is very long. And she also inspired him to sing his own music and his own songs. So I wanted to capture all of that, but also show her strength and autonomy and who she was, and because there is such a beautiful kind of vulnerability to her and a longing for something. I think she was there out of such a pureness of heart and love for him, and she didn't want to gain anything. She wasn't looking for fame. So it's just beautiful how pure it was. But there is a longing, because she wants him to not be a mystery, you know, but he's always going to pick his art over any woman, as you see in the film.
Well, and you know, there's such beautiful complexity between the relationship with the two of them. Can I ask just about the experience? You worked with Timmy before.
Yes.
The experience of bringing that to life with him.
Well, I'd worked with him when I was 19, and actually, you know, Call Me By Your Name hadn't even come out yet when I worked with him, so not that I would say he's completely like Bob, but the trajectory of the career is kind of similar, and our relationship in the film and life, meaning I knew him before he became, you know, Timothée Chalamet in a lot of ways, and how, you know, Sylvie is the really only person that knew Bob before he became so famous. So it was nice that we knew each other before, and there's always a safety there, and you feel more comfortable with them because you've worked with them before. And we're quite silly together, and there's a warmth. So I think we could bring that, especially to the earlier years of Sylvie and Bob's relationship. It was nice to kind of bring a little bit of that into them. But it was, I mean, also just from a standpoint of getting to act with him as Bob, he's so brilliant. Like, I knew how great of an actor he was, and I always knew that he would rise to the challenge and do it, but I think how much so he did, it really blew me away and, like, exceeded any of my expectations. He's so incredible in this.
Well, and this movie captures, like, such a specific period of time in that early 60s, this, like, sort of hive of creativity in Greenwich Village.
Yeah.
Can I ask what you made of the way that this world had sort of been recreated, like, brought back to life?
Man, we filmed, a lot in New York, but also a lot in New Jersey, because obviously the New York streets, a little bit too modern now. They don't look like they did in the 60s. So we created, the amazing production design team created the 60s village and Cafe Wa and Minetta on these New Jersey streets. And it was, of course, it helps you kind of walking into that world and being in those costumes. Ariane Phillips was our costume designer, who her work is so authentic and incredible in this movie. She had, I think also Timmy had like 75 costume changes, but also such an evolution of growth of a character, watching him, from the little cap and scarf to going to the full leather, Ray-Bans Dylan that we know. So to be in that time, it is like a little time capsule, and I liked being there. There's something more romantic to it, no cell phones. And I also particularly love that I find this sweet that we're watching an old movie in a film that's in the 60s. I don't know, going to see that Now Voyager Betty Davis film on the date. I also think that the Sylvie and Bob relationship, there's a kind of old Hollywood romantic film. There's something there between them. The way that Jim shot their relationship feels like an old Hollywood on-screen couple, how it ends and the romance of it all.
And I have to ask about, you got to watch some of the Newport stuff. Yes. Like, it feels to me like an entire festival was basically put on.
It is so true. The Newport, the festival scenes, Jim put on a full festival for us all. And I, for those scenes, I was an audience member. I wasn't performing, but it would be, Boyd would come out as Johnny Cash and he would do his thing. And then, Monica would come out as Joan and sing her, like, in sets. So these takes would be, 30 minutes long of just full on concert. So to get to witness that was incredible. And it's also, it's really James, for him to be able to shoot that, so much coverage, you're always up against the clock, but just the geometry of the cameras and getting everyone's reaction, but also making sure that everyone has the time to really feel. Because when I would do my close-ups, it's not like they would just not perform for me. They did the whole take for me to feel, you have to, but that's a real credit to Jim for orchestrating this entire production and putting a festival on, real crowds.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I want to ask as well, just about, you've sung on film before.
Mm-hmm.
The complication of it, the vulnerability of it.
Yes.
What did you make? Sadly, Sylvie doesn't get to croon.
I know. I know.
But what did you make of the work that everybody had put into that?
Gosh, I was blown away by everyone singing and the work that they put into it. I know that Timothée had, he had 5 years to train and learn all the songs. I think he said he's learned like 50 Dylan songs that he can play and sing, and some of them, aren't even in the movie. He just learned them. And Monica, she never even sang before or played any instruments and learned for this, which that is just astounding. I'm like, you need to put an album out. Your voice is so beautiful. And Boyd as Johnny Cash. I mean, that's big shoes to fill, especially working with James, who did the Walk the Line incredible film. So a movie about Johnny Cash already. So they really just blew me away. And I know, I mean, I have sung on film before, and it's a vulnerable place to be in, because we're not singers, you know, and there is something to have to perform in front of a crowd, and it was really incredible to see. They blew me away. Everyone blew me away. Thank you.
Awesome. Lovely. So can I start by asking, you know, you're playing Joan Baez, you know, you're singing, you're performing. Where do you begin trying to figure out how to make the role your own?
You know, I know it's a thing that people have sort of talked about. I mean, I don't really feel like I was working to make Joan my own. The intention was not to mimic her or have the portrayal be any kind of imitation of her. But I really wasn't trying to infuse myself in this either. I think it was just about getting as close as I could to embodying her, to understanding maybe how she ticks, what she might be thinking in any given moment. But then for me, the work was sort of letting all of that go and just being present with usually Timmy in the scene, or, you know, Timmy as Bob, very much so Bob, not even really Timmy. And trusting the writing on the page and Jim's direction and his orchestration of these scenes, letting go and responding to what our wonderful audiences were giving us. But I really don't feel like I was putting my stamp on it. I think that's inevitable because it is through me, but that really wasn't something that I actively tried to do.
Right, absolutely. Well, I mean, let's talk about the relationship between Joan and Bob. I mean, it's a very complicated one. Tell me about how it was to sort of navigate that with Timothée.
Well, I mean, there again, I think we just showed up as much of like sort of fully formed versions of Joan and Bob as we could, and I felt so completely trusting of his portrayal and his understanding of Bob, and of the words on the page, you know, between Jay Cox and James Mangold. The scenes are beautiful, and were sort of the guide for us, and just for me, a lot of this was just very much present moment experience. Yeah. Well, tell me about the environment then that James creates that kind of lets that happen for you. Well, he's very he's a huge advocate for actors in that, you know, if I want to walk from point A to point B, but there's a camera there, my instinct would be to try to accommodate and move around the camera, and he'd sort of stop me and say, no, it's on wheels for a reason. It'll, you know, walk where Joan would walk. We'll figure it out, which you don't often get, particularly in the TV world, but just in general. You have to sort of accommodate. And he just wanted us to have every freedom to explore the space and be fully formed characters. And then as far as him designing sort of how the scenes would go, we talked about it very little. We rehearsed very little. We sort of went through and made sure everything still, all the words on the page still resonated with us, and that everything felt really authentic. And you know, as we were filming, sometimes he'd say, stop saying that, say this instead, or let's just take that line out. And he also trusts the actors to kind of, you know, sometimes you kick out a line and you just hold a reaction, or he would hold on a reaction of ours and have that be, you know, enough, as opposed to having to say what we're feeling. So it's really easy to trust his process in that way, not just because he's had so much incredible work, you know, already, you know, so many beautiful films out there, but also because he just very clearly seems to know what he wants. Of course, then he comes out and says, like, everyone thinks I have a plan, and I don't, and I trust the actors. And but I think that it's a mutual, sort of a collective trust experience, because it is a bunch of trust falls over and over again.
Well, and can I ask about this moment in music history that the film covers? Because it is the emergence of Bob Dylan. It's very much a film about him. But I feel like the ensemble plays its role as well, and there's a real sense of what's going on at that time. What do you think the film captures about this particular sort of explosion in culture?
I think it's really incredible the way you feel that collective community in every scene. I mean, even there are so many scenes where Bob is walking down the street and you feel that explosion of this cultural moment. You hear the music, you hear the sounds of the New York streets, and I feel like every frame is just full of life and other people, in a nice way, because it doesn't just, take you off on a mental spiral of a person whose mind we can't read.
And what do you think is going to surprise people about this film?
God, I don't know. I don't know what people's expectations are, really.
I suppose there's a whole sort of chapter of the audience that will not be aware, I suppose, of this history.
Yeah, I think it'll be different for everybody. I mean, I think there will be people who will be surprised by our ability to capture the time. I think there will be people who are surprised by the music itself and surprised by new fanship of Bob and Joe. I mean, we hope, we hope people gain interest in all of these musicians if they don't already have it. And I don't think it's surprising that Timmy's incredible in it, but I think, for anyone, I think people who do have an attachment to Bob and Joan and Johnny and Pete, I hope they're pleasantly surprised by what they see.
And I meant what I said last night. As ironic as it may sound, like the moments of music in this film really do feel electric. Especially House of the Rising Sun is, I think it's my favorite scene in the film.
Oh my God! Wow, thank you.
But so I just want to ask you about what the atmosphere is like in the room on those days that you're performing, that you're watching others perform. What kind of magic is in the air, I suppose.
It really did feel very magical to watch each other perform. My very first day, I was shooting outside the Chelsea Hotel, but before that, it was I got to watch Ed on the steps of City Hall, and every time I drive by it in New York now, I feel the weight of that moment, and that was just incredible to see him play and perform immediately. And then same with Timmy, getting to rehearse the music with him was like mind-blowing. And then to see him up there performing and captivating an audience was, it really was magical. I think when it came to my own, it was mostly terror, especially in the beginning, and especially with that song, because I knew the weight of it. It's a very difficult song. It's slow. It's an early song for Joan. You have to sort of there's a tall order, and that you have to win over the audience and show them someone they recognize as Joan. But the more we performed, the more comfortable it became. And then by the time we were playing It Ain't Me, Babe, and Mama, You've Been on My Mind, we're just having a blast. That was just really, really fun. And we only had so many takes, and it just was like we had gotten it at that point. And so it felt celebratory and fun, and you could lace in all of the emotion with it. And so it's a different kind of magic, I think.
Did that, the whole Newport stuff, did it feel like being at your own festival?
It did, as much as I could possibly know. I mean, my prior experience with festivals was literally only pretty much bartending at festivals, and I used to bartend at Outside Lands in San Francisco, to get by as a commercial actor. But yeah, it felt it felt as close as, I mean, I've ever been to performing at a music festival. And we'd be in back playing riffs and learning from each other, and getting to see Boyd perform for the first time as Johnny was just incredible, and like just lit up the entire audience and backstage, and everyone's dancing, even sort of behind the wings in Video Village, like people are moving, and God, it was so fun. I'd love to be backstage at a music festival at this point and see if any of it, kind of aligns.
There's still time. We can make that happen.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've been down the road with Jim Mangold for a while now. I think it's 3 movies you've done together, including this one. How did he bring this project up to you?
I before the Indiana Jones film, I knew that he was eyeing to do this piece, and the Johnny Cash role wasn't I guess invented in the script yet, and so I was looking at a different role in the movie, and
Interesting.
got to Jim and I said, hey, I think another actor is attached to this, but if they do something doesn't work out, Jim, I'm prepping this character already. And then we did, and then it didn't happen. Whatever reason, it didn't get set up at the time. And then we went off to Indiana Jones. And then even throughout that, I was kind of chirping to Jim. I was like, hey, I don't think that actor is going to work out. I'm going to do it. And then I got the biggest surprise of my life. I think in like May of 23, or when was it? May of 23. He got a call out of the blue, and Jim asked me to play this part of Johnny Cash, which was terrifying and exciting.
I was going to say it must have been mildly terrifying because Jim quite famously,
Joaquin Phoenix, who played the iconic version of Johnny Cash, who's first of all I got to do Johnny Cash, and then Joaquin's already done it. It's like it was a lot, but in a way, that was the most exciting part too, because it was an entirely different version. And then, of course, I don't think if Jim hadn't been the one doing all this, I probably wouldn't have been engaged in this. But how it came about was researching with Bob Dylan. He discovered that they were pen pals, and Bob had actually kept the letters. And when Jim made Walk the Line 20 years ago, he didn't know that relationship existed because Johnny Cash lost the letters or didn't care about them. So you really knew, like, there goes to show you which type of person is the other. And so that's how the creation of Johnny came into the story. And so I think that they obviously so exquisitely did Walk the Line. This is an entirely different function and version of Johnny. So I felt I was entitled to chase down that dragon.
Yeah. I wonder if that detail that Bob had kept the letters and Johnny hadn't kind of informed the character that you wound up creating here, because there's a brilliant, my favorite moment is you sort of like completely walking past Bob, on your way to your car, and him just having to like stop you and say, hey, it's me, it's Bob, it feels very true, that moment.
Well, there's nothing, I don't think Johnny keeps anything precious. There's not this nostalgic quality to him. He really lives in the moment. I don't know how conscious he is, but who gives a damn? Like he's creating such amazing timeless music. Both of them are, and I think that's really the I don't want to say functionality, but the purpose of John and their relationship at that particular time is to say, hey, man, you're at a crossroads in your life, and this machine will suck you into it. And you'll get spat out, a different version of Bob Dylan. But if you choose to have your voice and stay who you are, you can do something special. I think he sees reflection in Johnny.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the fascinating things about the film is the fact that like all the music we're seeing was shot on set. You know, that it was performed live. I wonder if you can sort of describe the atmosphere for those moments that you got to witness and take part in, doing it live and sort of being in that moment on set.
Well, I kind of discovered that on the day. And I only thought it was for the festival because, you know, it's a festival, it's a live festival. I did, because we did this running sort of huge long take where Joan goes up first, she sings, and I'm astonished that that's actually her singing such an angelic voice. And then Ed goes up and he says, "We got a surprise guest. Johnny Cash is here. We're going to bring him up first. Then we'll get to Bob." So I come up and run 2 songs. And then Bob comes up and runs his song. And it was just this long take. And I just thought it was that. And I love that Timothée didn't want to have conversations in between takes. You know, there was no use for any of that stuff. You know, the most we did was me and Monica would talk about Johnny's strumming pattern, which was that boom, that train sound. And I think that would naturally happen. You got 2 artists just sharing information of how you play your instrument. And so there wasn't any extra fat on the bone, so to say, of talk, you know, just chit-chatting, you know, about, we were just dialed in, and I loved that. And I love that about Timothée, and I never will forget of such a wise thing to say from such a young man was, you know, when it's over, it's over, and you're not going to get this time back. So I thought that was special, and just to be locked into the moment, that's a good piece of advice.
Absolutely. Well, listen, just finally, you know, I guess we know Timmy to be a great actor. I think people are going to be surprised in this film by just how authentic he feels, and how true he feels. I wonder, from your perspective, what you made of Timmy's performance in this.
You know, I have worked with a lot of actors, and I think he is the real deal. You can tell from the language that he has. He comes to set and asks what the scene is about. What's the theme here we're doing? What's the relationship, tracking all this stuff, the stuff that, you know, I love to talk about because it really defines your character, and it really goes in the harmony of like, what's Jim written. And so, yeah, he's the real deal. He's the full package. I'm so happy to share a stage with him and Ed and Monica and Elle and everybody else who was a part of this. Just really everybody is at the top of their game. And Jim, thank God he's around, because he's the one that sets it all up.
Yeah, absolutely. A fabulous film. You're fabulous in it, Boyd. Thank you so much. No drones.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Take care.
Can I start by asking, just what is it about this period of time in America that particularly interests you, and what was it about Bob's story that you wanted to tell?
It's a good question. I find myself telling a lot of stories about the 60s. It's true. And it is a fascinating moment for me. I do think it's a turning point in world culture, and certainly in the United States, where modernism had arrived and modern issues had arrived, in the sense of fear of nuclear annihilation, and in the sense of a new kind of global politics in terms of civil rights, in terms of women's rights, and artistically, that there was suddenly a kind of expansion of how we had ever seen everything since the post-war period. But I also think, you know, maybe I'm visiting, you know, I was born in 1963, so it's like visiting a time which you don't completely remember, but have some kind of foggy, childlike vision of.
And you know, the cast sing and perform in this film, and they're doing it live as well. Now, I remember on Walk the Line, your cast performed as well. I think they were pre-recorded at that time.
Yes. Not in all cases. There were a
Okay.
couple cases, a few cases where Joaquin or others were singing live, but but nonetheless.
Well, no. So tell me what it adds. You think to the overall experience that they're going to that effort, that they're learning to play these instruments, they're learning to perform like these characters. Why is that important?
Well, the converse would be impossible in my mind, meaning at least for these movies, when you have artists whose whole brand, who the identifying attribute of their music is its authenticity, its earnestness, its honesty, to do that in a way where it's not even their own voice coming out of their mouth seems a contradictory notion from the beginning. But on top of all that, this idea of doing it live as much as you can is, to me, to free the actor to be able to bend the song, to be able to become inspired while in the scene, because the song isn't just a song, it's a part of a scene. So if they're feeling stress from someone off stage, if they're carrying the baggage of the previous scene into the playing of this song, then there's multiple levels to the scene. How they're feeling, what they brought, the feeling they brought into the scene, who's listening, who's watching, and the actor, when you're talking about the kind of incredible actors I get to work with, takes advantage of all that material to make something new happen.
Well, and it is a wonderful ensemble that you form here.
It is.
In the center of the nucleus of the atom, if you like, is Timothée Chalamet as Bob Dylan. Tell me about the partnership with Timmy.
Well, it's gone on over 5 years, and when you have an actor with his ambition and power and talent, and also he's really smart, like really smart in an intellectual way and in an instinctual way about the material itself. The script, I would be writing and reading in pages over the phone. We would, even while we were shooting, we would talk to each other almost every night and go over the next day's work. I find him to be a wonderful friend and collaborator, but also it's kind of the relationship that's necessary if you want a performance like he gives in this film, which is that the director and the actor really have to be walking hand in hand.
Absolutely. And you know, you've assembled this like incredible set of behind the scenes collaborators. I think maybe one or two new ones here, but like, you know, there's a real company now that's working on your projects. You've recreated 1960s Greenwich Village, the Newport Festival, with such sort of flourish and style, and it feels like a time capsule. It feels like you're right there. Tell me about, I suppose, that collaboration with your core team and why it was important to get that feeling.
Well, a number of the people I've worked with on this movie are people I've worked with for many, many movies, among them Phaedon Papa-Michael, the director of photography, Francois Audouy, the production designer, Ariane Phillips, the costume designer, and others. Even the camera operator, Scott Sakamoto, has been on many of my movies. And it's a shorthand you have with each other of how to make a movie. They know how I like to make a movie. Even though I move from one genre to another, they know I don't really shoot things differently. The genres take care of themselves. I tend to block and arrange things the same for every picture, in the sense that I have the kind of core instincts I have, for good or worse, for better or worse. But the great thing about having a team like that, especially on a movie like this that doesn't have, you know, a kind of Wolverine budget, is that you have to all find ways to save money and work efficiently, and having trust in each other. You know, the production designer knows if he dresses this side of the street, I'm never turning around to look at that side. So he can put all his resources to what's going to be on camera, and I won't surprise him on the day and suddenly go, nah, I'm looking over here. And or you know, Phaedon and I have a very real language, and we almost always shoot anamorphic, widescreen. We use very old lenses. We both love a kind of very naturalistic look to the movie. We're both real fans of letting performance drive everything, that we don't want our shot making to be ruling the picture, but in collaboration with the actors.
Yeah. Lovely. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.